The Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony, we have played here several times since the renovation of the organ. As a matter of fact, it was the first piece played with the orchestra after the renovation of the organ. It, of course, is probably one of the most well-known of organ orchestra pieces. We've done it probably 2 or 3 times since. And so by now I'm very comfortable with the piece because I've played it many times. But when I'm reviewing something, I have registration written down particularly for this organ and the balance with this orchestra, which is very important because if you're playing in a different venue with a different orchestra and on a totally different organ, the registration might very well change. So the first thing that I consider when I'm reviewing this piece is I try to retrieve, which I've written down, all the registration that I had from the last performance. That's usually my starting point. Now, even though it's the same hall, the same organ, and the same orchestra, it will be a different conductor. So conductors have a different concept of how they want this to sound as they do any piece. And maybe they will want the organ to be more buried, sometimes the sound within the orchestra sound, or quite the opposite, they might want it to be more prominent. So then I have to, usually I prepare more than one registration, even though I have my basic registration that I want. I think in those terms of what if the conductor wants this a little more hidden, so what registers would I remove, or what if they want it a little more present, what would I add to that? So I think the major concern when you're playing with the orchestra is, for me, is the sound and how you're either going to blend or come to the fore. One of the things that's very interesting about the way Saint-Saëns wrote this is the whole first movement, which then is connected to the second movement without pause, but the whole first movement has no organ playing at all, and yet here it's called the Organ Symphony. So what's interesting is he almost builds up, in a way, the suspense of, gee, when is the organ going to come in? And then what's so wonderful, when he brings it in, you can barely hear it. It comes out of silence. This is a quote of Saint-Saëns about the organ when he was asked why he had included it in this symphony. And he said, between the pianissimo, which almost reaches the limit where sound ceases and silence begins, up to a range of formidable and terrifying power, every degree of intensity can be obtained from this magical instrument. Then for the third movement, he again does not use the organ at all. But for the fourth movement, he takes, and I would like to later give you an example, he takes the Dies Irae theme, which he's used throughout the piece, and he puts it in major instead of being, in the minor key, which it usually appears in, puts it in major, and it opens up the throat of the organ in its full glory. You hear it. So he expresses in music exactly what he said here in words.